Welcome to Hunters and Unicorns, the 2020 Mastery Mission. 20 topics, 20 guests for 20 minutes. We're here to unlock the tribal wisdom to help you get one step closer to mastery. I'm Simon Kutis and I'm joined by my co-host, Ollie Kune.
Welcome back to the show, everyone.
And we are absolutely delighted to welcome the legendary Keith Butler. Keith, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, guys. Good to see you guys again.
Great to have you back on the show, Keith.
Yeah, it's good to be here. Had fun last time. Let's do it again.
I'm very surprised you came back for round two.
Yeah,
but
me
that's,
too. Right. The abuse I take from you.
In the way of an introduction, Chief Revenue Officer at the absolute rocket ship, the next Sutter Hill Starship Enterprise that is observing an absolutely very, very disruptive and exciting company, and with huge potential. And of course, Keith, you are one of the original 33 CXOs from our very first series. 2 years ago, you were quite early in this journey of observing, but I suppose just a bit of a background. Obviously, you were part of that great success story at BMC, Blade Logic, PTC, and one of the most famous and accomplished and revealed Canadian sales executive leaders.
Wow. Yeah, well, I don't know about that, but thanks.
So I suppose just tell us a little bit about, what's happening at Observe Inc. at the moment.
Yeah, sure, man. Well, yeah, since the last time we talked, we've been super busy. Really working on just refining what we call our product market fit and onboarding customers and the engineering team has been amazing, just cranking away and getting this thing ready. So it's been a ton of fun. And we're getting super close. So the excitement is building.
Absolutely. So we have 20 minutes. Please introduce your topic, Keith.
My topic. Well, you guys wanted to talk about the getting to the economic buyer as kind of a skill and maybe there's a couple of tips I could provide. So I'm happy to do that. I think that's really what we're going to talk about. But you got to be careful because I could go on for hours on this one because it's like the pivotal point of our of a sales campaign is meeting the EB. So anyway, yeah, I'm happy to talk about that.
Amazing, and I think we can all talk about this subject. So really exciting subject. So look, let's just start it off, Keith. Why now more than ever is it so important to get to that EB as early as possible? Yeah.
Well, I have my when I back in 2008 when the collapse happened, the EB shifted from IT executives to the CFO, and really in my career that was a pivotal moment because no longer could you sell on features and functions, you had to sell on business value, and therefore getting to the EB was really the only way to get significant deals done, especially in the enterprise. And I kind of feel like for totally different reasons, we're getting to the same place. Briefly, product-led growth has basically taken the leverage out of the technology process. You get leverage in technology selling by demos and providing quotes and doing technical POCs, but in product-led, all of that stuff is kind of self-service to the customer, and so the seller is kind of left with the decision: do I really just kind of like get in the way of that process, or do I add unique value? And to me, nothing's really changed in that regard. The best sellers in the world connect business pain and business problems to technology, and they kind of stand in the middle of that, as John Kaplan says all the time. And so getting to the EB is like square in the enabling portion of what a great seller does today, and I think it's just accelerating now. So if you can't do that, it's going to be real tough. If you can do it really well, it's going to be fantastic. You're going to have an amazing run and an amazing career in what you're doing. So I think that's why, man.
It's interesting that you say that obviously sales is now much more kind of product led. But if sales professionals are able to, you know, close enough deals by just, entertaining that product led sell, why is it important that they now start to go against that grain and elevate to kind of a more value sell?
Well, there's many. I mean, first of all, like if you consider yourself a problem solver versus a flogger of technology, so your job basically being is to help your customer, help your champion win and solve problems. Okay, that's very different than being the front of a brochure. Okay, where you introduce technology and introduce the SC and introduce the company and so on. You're the coordinator, the vendor. Those are very different. Okay, so if we establish that, the thing is, if you're going to solve a problem, you got to get to the person that owns the problem if you're going to solve it, um, and do it effectively. So if from your own perspective, if you want to be efficient with your time, if you want to understand where you can win and where you're going to lose, get to the economic buyer as fast as possible so you can qualify, to see if there's something to do there. Um, you got to help your champion, right? So your champion really at the end of the day is the person who's going to make this thing happen or not, and the person who, if you help win, you win. So if by helping them, you need to get to the economic buyer to help set them up for success. Those are two, I'd say, big ones. Yeah, those are the two big ones.
And I suppose the ones that are actually getting to the economic buyers, are you seeing that, they're able to make, more consistent money? What is the outcome of this? Me as a seller, why should I, how does it benefit me?
Yeah, that's almost asking, I don't know why you need water as a human being or something alive. I mean, like, so it's foundational, to being effective at selling. So it's hard for me to answer, I think, explicitly like that. The value is clearly, if as a seller, you see your job as solving problems and then maximizing the return on your energy, okay, on your effort. You only have so much time, okay. So a lot of sellers spend a lot of time, a lot of wasted time chasing deals that don't happen. And the best way to shortcut that process, to understand exactly, if there is a deal to be had, if there is a problem to solve, is to get to what we call the economic buyer, the person who owns the problem, right, at the top, and understand the problem, understand its priority, and understand if you can connect your technology to solving that problem. Okay, that is the number one thing that you can do to kind of get out fast if there's no deal, or win a deal if there's something to be won. So, one of the things that we used to do in the old days was really help organizations fix their POC conversion process. Okay, so the idea that, like, I've gone into companies where their POC execution rate was like 10%. So they do 10 POCs and they'd win one deal. I mean, just from like a pure, forget about selling, but from any process, if you put 10 things in and you get one out, that's terrible. That's terribly inefficient. For a seller, it means 1 in 10. For an SC, it means I spend 90% of my time wasted. If you do that at scale at an organization, you're heading for disaster. So reversing that to 9 of 10, and the number one thing you can do if you want to win 9 of 10 POCs is get to the economic buyer before you do all that technical work and figure out if there's a problem to solve and if you have alignment in solving the problem. Okay, now that's kind of in the old kind of technical leverage type selling motion that we still use, but in product led it's kind of changing, right? Today it's like connecting with a champion who's trying to solve a problem and getting to the economic buyer to ensure that all this really cool technical stuff they do, in the product-led self-service stuff up front, actually solves a problem that we should invest our organization to help them solve it. Is equally, if not more powerful in that. So for an individual seller, if you don't see that connection to your bottom line, I don't know how to help.
Great. So I suppose, when is the right time? You say meet the economic buyer as early as possible. When is the right time? Can it be too early, or is there a perfect time?
It can be too early if you don't have really anything to talk about. So sure, it can be too early, but the more risk is that it's much too late. Because every meeting, all the work you're doing before you do that, if you think of the EB meeting as the pivotal moment in a campaign. Now, not just in the initial sell, but in the long term relationship and success of the customer. But that first EB meeting, you can't have a third one until you have a first one. So let's just focus on the first one. Yeah, it is the pivotal meeting that basically allows you to determine if there's a deal there that you should invest your company and your energy in or not. So yeah, earlier is better because earlier means I qualify earlier. Now, how do I know if I'm ready? Well, there's a whole set of skills associated with getting ready to the EB. It starts with like this mindset of, thinking about discovery, the discovery process, as having a goal and a very succinct goal. I always ask my sellers, what's the purpose of discovery? And you get a lot of answers until we kind of narrow it down to really what the purpose is to get to the economic buyer with a well-defined problem that we can ask them if they understand it, if it's a priority, and will they sponsor the solving or the investigation of whether they can solve this problem. Okay, so getting ready for those three questions is what discovery is about. So when you have those, when you're ready, and you go as fast as you can.
So tell us a little bit more about the agenda within that economic buyer meeting. I think you've just started to really touch on some of the key components of that, but can you expand on that?
Yeah. Okay. Let's maybe start with what it's not, and then it'll be real easy to see what it is. So it's not, hey, would you like to see a demo of the product that our champion really likes, and do you have budget for it, and do you have an initiative kind of ongoing around this area? Okay, and then a lot of us talking. Back in the day, we kind of came up with like 4 major questions to ask an economic buyer, and this is kind of what I hinge kind of everything on, is getting ready to ask these 4 questions, right? The first is like, do you understand the problem we are trying to solve, and does it connect to the business problem that's most important to you? Okay, so the first thing is just like understanding and making sure we're aligned on the problem we're solving, and it's not a technical problem; it's a business problem. Okay, so at Observe, for example, those questions simply are troubleshooting efficiency. Do you feel like it's hampering your ability to move very quickly in your DevOps process? MTTR is a mean time to repair, is a kind of a metric that we talk a lot about, and defining that metric in the customer's terms is really important to them. It's an example. Okay. Once you align on the problem, the next one, is it a priority? Is solving this problem a high priority for you? Okay. Not stating this is a high priority because it's a high priority everywhere else. The question is, for you, is it a high priority? Now, if I understand the problem and I'm an EB and it's a high priority, now I can start to think about the execution of solving this problem. Okay. And that is really, we've defined a process for us to go through together. Sometimes it's more of a structured POC, sometimes it's a detailed business case, but there's an event there that we're going to go through to evaluate whether the technology can be implemented or used. And will you sponsor that process? Meaning, will you help us keep this thing on the rails, and keep it aligned to the business problem? So anytime we see it going off the rail, which is really the 4th question, which is can we come back to you and keep a dialogue going so that we can make sure we stay on track? Okay. So those 4 questions are kind of the structure of an economic buyer meeting. It doesn't have to be any more than that. It can be an hour, but can also be 10 minutes. Depends how well you're ready to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. You talk a lot about, the difference between being able to therefore articulate hard dollar savings versus kind of flaky productivity metrics. I suppose the context of what you've just shared, that also starts to come into play as well to make sure, the EB really cares about these things and the value proposition ties together. So just kind of take us there and elaborate a little bit more on that, please.
Yeah, sure. It's actually one of the things that early on in my leadership, in my management career, I kind of became obsessed with in a way, is that when you're a rep, you meet the EB infrequently, okay, because you have a handful of campaigns, and those campaigns you meet them infrequently. But as a manager, one of the ways you can really help is help reps in EB meetings. So you're in EB meetings all the time. And one thing I became painfully aware of was that, like, EBs tend to ask all the same questions. They basically ask the 5 or 6 same questions over and over again. And it started to think, wow, well, that's really super interesting, because way back when I was at Xerox, we had these like structured value propositions that were basically like a slide deck that we had that was basically built to answer a certain number of questions in order. And this is when this thing came together, is guess what? Those questions they ask are aligned really well to the value proposition deck that we used to use back at Xerox. And so I basically kind of took that and turned it into like into these things. So think, if you are an economic buyer, the things you're thinking of, you get presented, let's just say dozens or hundreds of projects that you can pick. And let's say you could only pick 10 of those 100 that you get presented internally in your company. Which ones do you pick? Well, you start with like, okay, do I understand the problem? How high a priority is solving this problem to me and to my boss, or to me and to the organization? And if it's high, I start to look at, okay, well, I start to look at risk. Like, how risky is it to solve this problem? And that risk starts with a business case, and the business case starts with hard dollar savings. Right. How do I know I can get benefit? Or how do I define the benefit, and how do I know I can get it? Well, if my benefit is soft and fluffy, like I want to make 100 people 10% more efficient so that I can kind of redeploy them to other more efficient tasks, that's okay, but that's soft. And of those 100 projects, let's just say they all have those soft benefits, right? And EBs are very used to kind of seeing that type of benefit. But a hard benefit is like something I can take to the bottom line right now. Okay, so for example, an easy one would be replacing a tool. I spend 50,000. I want to spend 10. I can save 40,000 if I do that today. Okay, there's lots of things there now. So that's the foundation. That's why the first layer of how as an EB I evaluate risk is like, what's the benefit? How hard is it? And then like, how sure am I going to be to get it? How complicated is it to get? And so, but the tip of that spear is a hard dollar savings. If you're building business cases off soft dollar savings, you're 1 in 100. And it's just really hard for an EB to figure that out. So you got to figure out how to get hard dollar savings into your business case. And that's the beautiful thing I love about our value prop here at Observe, is it's built off hard dollar savings. The foundation of the business case is always hard dollar. It's not fluffy.
So Keith, do you turn up in that meeting with the hard dollar savings, or do you turn up with the meeting to understand and discover further to come back with the hard dollar savings?
Well, I would say you come with a hypothesis of the hard dollar savings, leaving it to the EB to kind of help shape that hypothesis. You don't want to show up to an EB meeting and say, hey, I want to save you some hard dollars. How would I do that? You come up with a meeting and say, hey, we've built this hypothesis with our champion that basically says we could save you X. What do you think?
Yeah. Why wouldn't you go in there and ask that question, Keith?
Because EBs are really busy. They don't want to build a business case for you. That's your job. right? They're there to evaluate the project and determine if they're going to sponsor it, because you're going to ask that third question, will you sponsor, right? So they're going to make that decision based on whether they want to get the value or not. If they got to go create the business case, they're going to look at the champion and go, dude, like, I'm busy. What are you doing?
So just in a competitive situation, Keith, we mentioned at the start that obviously technology solutions are quite product led. Economic buyers are extremely busy. Why would they not just let the process continue as it needs to and let the IT teams deal with it and just be part of the final decision process? How are you able to get above the noise to actually insist on the EB, and why would they entertain that? How would you position that?
It's a good question. So, I mean, at one level, I guess they wouldn't, they may not really care if their technical people go around and do 100 projects and never really get them approved. But I actually think that that's not the case. They tend to really care about what their people are spending time on, and they want their people spending time on things that solve the problems. The problem is no one asks, right? No one aligns, right? No one aligns these things. And so when you ask, you actually get amazing results. They're not used to it. We used to say, like, out of 100, 5 sellers actually ask these questions and run this program in this way. So think of that, 1 in 20 ask these questions. They're so used to showing up and getting demos and getting qualified and ask if they'll buy. When someone asks them if their organization's spending time on a priority problem and have we defined it properly, you'll be amazed at the change in behavior. You actually get engagement.
It is absolutely, yes, it is absolutely remarkable. So Keith, lots of our viewers and our listeners, you have given us some real kind of tangibles, but could you perhaps just summarize, what are the things that, our listeners and our viewers should absolutely try, relative to the things that we've spoken about today?
Sure. Let me start with some fluffy stuff, and then I can get to the meat thing. Because what we spend a lot of time talking about at Deserve is what we call intent, right? And it's basically, what it sounds like is, as a seller, the first thing you got to do this really well is have good intent. Okay, and intent basically means, what are you trying to accomplish? What's your goal? If your goal is to jam technology, sell something, hit your quota, you're going to be very transparent to not just to the EB, to your champion. And this whole process, you're really going to struggle with. You're going to be fighting it. Okay, having intent is really the concept that what you're really trying to do is help your champion win. Okay, and when your champion wins, you win. Okay, now that's a mindset thing. It's not a tactic. The good news is it also is a skill. You can learn it. So we used to recruit for these things only, and we used to call it, curiosity or urgent curiosity or infectious curiosity. And basically, it was the same idea. Today, I think we can develop these skills in a certain subset that maybe before we would just try to recruit for. But so that's kind of the first thing you got to get your head around is having really good intent, because it's really transparent. So I don't know, that's a precursor. We could probably do another session on that, but that's the first thing. Then after that, when your intent's good, your technique is not so important. You can kind of step all over it, but if your intent's good, you can kind of run this play effectively. Now, once you have it and you work on the skill, I would try a couple of really kind of simple things in concept, but sometimes hard to do. Create a value hypothesis with your champion. A couple sentences to start with, which defines the problem that you're trying to solve. And it can't be fluffy. Try to make it very specific. And if you can exemplify it with some metrics, after you describe it, you've made it specific enough. And that is the kind of the anchor which you're going to go to the EB with. This is the problem, Mr. Economic Buyer, or Mrs. Economic Buyer, that I'm trying to solve. And do you understand it? Do you agree with it? Does it make sense? How would you change it? Okay, that will get the conversation going in an amazing way. That is the first thing. Now, it seems easy. It's sometimes difficult to do to get it right. The beautiful thing is, it's kind of a win-win. If you ask the question, if you get it right, well, you got it right. That's nice. You can impress somebody that you got it right. If you get it wrong, they're going to fix it for you, and you win too. So that's kind of the first big thing I would say to get right. Tactically, building a value proposition that kind of starts with these questions, right? And when you do that and you kind of slow down for it, you really think it through, you build a deck that tries to address these questions and work with your champion to build it, amazing things will happen. You will uncover pain, problems, metrics, all kinds of goodness that you can use for the economic buyer. And the third thing I'd say is just start with the end in mind. The end in mind being, I need to get through this discovery process as quickly and as thoroughly as possible so I can get to the economic buyer. That is my goal. Not to avoid the economic buyer, not to jam a small deal without the economic buyer's knowledge or understanding or buy-in because somehow you think that's more efficient. But to get there, do it right, pull that slingshot back so you can be really, really effective. And I think, guys, let me jump on my soapbox for one sec. That is timeless. That skill as a seller is timeless. That doesn't matter what the economic condition is. It doesn't matter if it's product-led or sales-led or any of this stuff. Being able to do that as a seller is differentiated. It's unique, and you will have an amazing career for here till the end of selling enterprise software.
An amazing, amazing, amazing place to stop there, Keith. I think, in summary, what we've heard today is that, especially in what has become a much more transactional, kind of technology-led economy right now, there is even more need to be able to really stand tall above that, and to quote John McMahon, get above the noise. And that's why this meeting with the economic buyer is so fundamental. I think we've heard some incredible advice there, which will hopefully help our listeners and our viewers really understand how they can become more efficient, how they can get to that yes a lot earlier, but also, as you say, get out of the deal earlier if there's no deal to be had. And I think that's equally important. So I think it's been an absolutely fascinating and incredibly valuable session today, Keith. And we are absolutely so thankful for you taking the time and the courage to return, having experienced this once before. So
I don't think it takes courage, Simon. Come on.
Yeah, no, that's cool. You guys got me all fired up now. So there's actually two quick things I want to say on this topic. One, before we leave, is don't get in the way. Don't stick this process in the way of, if you're in a product-led environment. Don't get in the way of it. Don't be the guy who puts the hockey sticks in the spokes and slows down all that great motion. Like you said, Simon, get above it, right? Enable it. Allow it to work and take leverage from it. Don't stop it and slow it down. And the other thing you said there, which is the other thing I really believe, Amy Duke wrote a book on poker about who's the winners of a poker hand. It's the winner and the first out. And we talk about that. Getting out first means, and getting out for the right reasons, that there's no alignment to solve a problem, is a great thing. And getting there is huge for your sales efficiency as a seller. Being okay with that, but asking those tough questions to the economic buyer will really help you out. So you guys better put a cork in me, or we're gonna keep going.
We can keep going, Keith. We can keep going. But look, I think, this has been an absolutely inspirational session as ever. I think if you haven't, I suppose, reaching out to the viewers here, if you haven't heard Rob Watson's episode here on the Win-Win, I think Keith and Rob driving on so many parallels to his episode, which was the Win-Win, that will be very influential in and I suppose extending on this episode here and this mastery mission. So Keith, really appreciate you coming back on the show. It's been absolutely fantastic. We've loved having you here. It's been great as always.
It's been fun. Thanks, guys. Really appreciate the time.
So to all our viewers and listeners, we hope you have enjoyed the session. If you've liked what you've heard, please do like, share, comment. But a big thank you to the legend that is Keith Butler. Thank you so much for coming back on the show. And we hope and we look forward to welcoming everybody back to another mastery session soon. Thank you so much.